Why not join over 1 million traders globally who've already chosen CMC Markets? CMC Markets support you whenever the markets are open with award-winning platforms backed by 30 years experience. So trade your way. Visit cmcmarkets.com.
All trading involves risks.
It's Gerard Whateley. Thanks for listening to the podcast. In this episode, an earthquake hit Victoria, which was quite the experience to share together. Melbourne President Kate Roffey, injured Bulldog Josh Bruce. We studied the history of the curse of Norm Smith with Mike Sheen in the studio and spoke to Hassaman, Ray Groom and Greg Hobbs. The trade bill with Tom Morris, Melbourne Storm Chief Executive Justin Rodsky, Racing Victoria Chief Giles Thompson and Adam Gilchrist from Perth. You can get in touch at any time. Whateley at sen.com.au. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. Good morning. What a shameful, shameful time for our town. Our fair city at the mercy of a lawless mob. We'll hunker down in our sporting world and immerse ourselves in the comforts of the grand final, but we can't and shouldn't pretend that it's not happening. What we saw yesterday, that's not the city I've lived my life in. It's as shameful as it is disturbing. So we rely today on what unites us. The misfortune of injury has Josh Bruce separated from his Bulldog team in the week that he's strived for the best part of 10 years for. So what's he doing? He's in at Whitten Oval with the staff packing merchandise to send to club members. He'll join me shortly. The Melbourne Storm, they know their connection to the people of this city. The almost 23,000 members who have seen just 5 games across 2 seasons. They've been gifted complimentary memberships for next year. That's the best of us. Justin Rodsky coming up. And the Melbourne Demons stand on the cusp of easing 57 years of pain. Simon Goodwin and his team have drawn our admiration from the earliest days of the season. They extolled a change of culture, they expressed a confidence of purpose, and they displayed all of that when it mattered between the sirens. The rewards have been plentiful, and last night, Goodwin was acknowledged by his peers as the Coach of the Year.
Look, I probably made changes at the end of 2019, Jared, to be honest with you. You know, it was a year that was really disappointing. It was a year where there was a lot of pressure building on the footy club from an expectation perspective, and I needed to make change personally. You know, I could sense in my own mind and my own coaching that the game was starting to get hold of me. You know, we live in a really brutal industry where the spotlight's always on you, and I engaged in some mentors away from the game that really just showed me a different way of looking at things, created a different energy. And really coming into this year, it was really about just making sure I did it the way that I wanted to do it and being true to myself and true to our footy club. You know, I had enormous belief in our playing group. I had enormous belief in the foundations and the people that I'm working with. And in the end, you know, I sit here today as a reflection of a lot of people's work and, you know, a lot of the club's work that I've done over a long, long period of time. You know, there's a period in my coaching where the game was definitely getting on top of me. There's no question about that. And I think it was at that time that I had to reset myself and engage the people that I needed to bring the joy and the love back for what the game brings. And it really is about the connection. It's about the players. It's about doing something that's bigger than yourself. And that's where I sit here today. You know, I'm at a magnificent footy club in Melbourne that are trying to do something that hasn't been done for 57 years with a group of players that I love and care about it, you know, that are living out their childhood dreams. So, you know, it's a pretty special place to be. You know, we've got a job to do, but we love what we do.
Simon Goodwin, acknowledged as the Alan Jeans Coach of the Year last night. He personifies so much of the change that we've seen at Melbourne. Well, that was just scary. Holy cow. Mount Waverley, Doreen, the Coles at Ivanhoe, Shepparton, Melton, Mount Edgerton, Roval, Bacchus Marsh, Langwarrin, Lara, Glen Waverley, Knoxfield, Hawthorn, Noble Park, Springvale, Chelsea, Montmorency, Devon Meadows, Camberwell, Frankston, Hadfield, Surrey Hills, where the books are falling off the shelf, Blackburn, Doreen, Footscray, Vermont South, Point Cook, Mulgrave, Cheltenham, Kew, Brunswick West, Sunbury, Reservoir, Barwon Heads, Lakes Entrance, Cooey Rupp, Alphington, Echuca, Bundoora. Oh, I've never felt anything like it in our town. Pete's in Paran. Did you feel it, Pete?
Yeah, not there at the moment. I'm South Road, Brighton. I was just parked. I was just finishing listening to the rest of that interview, and it started shaking. I was here the other day when it was really windy, and I thought the car wasn't moving like this. What's going on? And I thought someone may have seen me who knows me and was shaking the car. And I'm looking around the mirrors. I'm looking everywhere. The car is vibrating like nothing I've ever felt. It went for about half a minute. It was unbelievable. I've never felt anything like it in Melbourne, that's for sure.
Rick felt it in Barooga in New South Wales. Tom's in Portsea. Welcome to you, Tom. Have I got you there, Tom?
That's a big one. Yeah.
Yeah, fire away. You're on the air.
I was just sitting in the car down in Moorabbin on South Road, and it felt like a couple of big trucks are going past, and the car was sort of shaking left to right. And I'm thinking, I couldn't see any trucks, and there's no wind, so why are we moving? And then I listened to the radio, and after that last interview you had, listened to the juror talking about a tremor or whatever. And yeah, I felt a couple in Melbourne over the years, but I haven't felt one for a while. But that was a big one. That was quite a decent tremor. So
Yeah, that's...
It's all over. It's stretched right across the metropolitan area, hasn't it?
And further, well into regional Victoria and Albury, Morwell, all have felt that. That's quite extraordinary. Well, that's going to flavour our next few hours, that's for sure. At this time of year, we're all a bit superstitious. I don't know what all this is an omen of. It feels like the end of days. Ian's in Hamlin Heights. Hello to you, Ian.
Morning, Jared. Yes, it does feel a bit like that. That was the most unnerving experience I think I've had in a long time. I have experienced an earthquake once before in the mid-70s in a two-storey house, but this was just, I'm sitting here at my breakfast bench having breakfast, and the stool started moving. I'm thinking, what the heck's going on with my stool? And then I realised the bench was moving, and I'm looking outside to see who's pushing the house, and the pendant light above me is swinging. And I thought, oh, my God. So I realised it was probably an earthquake. So I went to the doorway and just stood there until it stopped. But that was amazing.
It really was. That's as unnerving as an experience as I've had. So I've had a pretty sheltered life, it's fair to say. But blimey. Rose is in Layla. Hello, Rose.
Good morning, Jared. Yeah, it happened here too. It was terrible. It sounded like a stampede of elephants on top of the house. And I thought, what's going on? And I was running past my study and all the books off the shelf were on the ground. And I thought, oh, my God, what's going on? What's going on? I ran outside and the neighbours across the road said the windows had shaken. The guy next door to me got out of his car and he said it was moving whilst it was parked. And it had moved quite a bit. And I thought, oh, my God. And everyone was just freaking out. And I still am freaking out. I'm hoping it doesn't happen again because they usually do come in twos.
Yes, there's evidently been an additional tremor felt out Baronia way, but nothing quite like the first. Rose, stay well. Was brushing my teeth. The building was swaying. Thought I was having a middle ear attack. Was sitting on the Portaloo and it almost tipped on me. What a story that would have been. Was parked in a truck at Docklands. Truck was shaking and people in apartment buildings had all vacated out onto the street. I'm working from home, Jared. I was on my morning Zoom meeting and the whole house started shaking. I thought it was just my house. Then we all looked at each other through the computer. Did everyone feel that? And Giggs has got a lovely way about him. I did not wake up today thinking I'd hear Josh Bruce saying, good luck with the earthquake. No, it's where life's taking us at the moment. Kate Roffey is the president of the Demons. She's over in the West. I'm not sure she's cleared quarantine just yet. Kate, it's great to have you on the program at such a moment.
Yeah, good morning. Yes, I'm still in quarantine, so I get out midnight Thursday, but I have just received my negative day 12 COVID test, so I'm free as soon as that clock ticks over.
Are you climbing the walls?
Not too bad. They do home quarantine over here, so I've opted for space out in the country. So I'm in the Swan Valley, away from anywhere. There's not much out here, but at least I've got a garden I can walk in and some birds I can listen to. So it hasn't been too bad.
Has it given you? Well, it would have given you a lot of time to ponder what's about to transpire.
It has. 2 weeks is just an incredibly long period of time when you're sitting there waiting for the game. I know for everyone who is stuck in Melbourne, and particularly, our family and partners of our players who are doing it tough, it's not really that much different. I do my work online, passes the days and media interviews. But yeah, it's fortunately not all the hoopla around here, so I sort of can put my mind on my work focus for periods of time, but I'm sure when I get out on Friday that'll be a completely different thing.
Do you know what you'll be walking out into? Have you got any sort of sense of it?
I've done a few radio interviews over here, and they tell me that the streets are pretty much red and blue Demon supporters. They've sent me some pictures of Cozzy, Pickett and a few other players that are up around on big towers in the city centre, and I know I've got straight in to get my hair cut. Everyone in Melbourne will be entirely understanding of that, so I'm getting my hair cut first thing, but then I'm into an AFL lunch, and then I have a dinner as well, and then we're on to Saturday, so that'll when it really starts to hit me in the eyes that we are where we are and the enormity of what we can hopefully do on Saturday.
How pleased for Simon Goodwin were you, Kate, last night to see his season acknowledged as the Coach of the Year by his peers?
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. I think these are the real things, the peer awards, Clary's coaching award, Simon's coaching award. They're the things that, really do show that the people who really know what's going on in the industry are respecting what they're doing. But as, Clary, when I spoke to him about his Players Award that he received, or Simon about his Coaches Award, I know they'd swap them any day for a premiership with their team, and they acknowledge, it's a great job done, but they know that it's part of a team that's pulled together to get us this far. And I think that's what people keep asking about. What is this culture? What's going on? And I think it's just we are one club, one team, and we all know our roles. We all play our roles, and hopefully that'll get us through on Saturday as well.
So the senior coach is always such a big part of that, Kate. As you would have observed Simon as a board member and then having come to the presidency in the first month, how would you describe him in his role as you've seen him really up close?
Yeah, look, it's interesting. I'm going to talk a lot to Goody, and one of the things that we talk about, whether it's becoming president or whether, as he said, becoming senior coach, you're never prepared for it. You don't quite know what it's going to be like, and it takes you a while to settle into that role. And I heard the clip that you played just before I came on, where Simon said, everything sort of took over him and got hold of him, and that's where you are learning the ropes, and you're trying so hard to make it all work and to control everything, and you realise that isn't how it actually works. And I think that's when he talks about the reset he went through, was actually sitting there and realising, hey, I don't have to do this by myself. There are other people here to support me. And really, you'd be aware, Jared, that we went through that review last year where we changed not the head coach and not sort of changing individuals, but we actually went through and said, what do we need as a coaching group here? And we brought in a number of different coaches who added to that whole need, I think, as a coaching group. And Simon's benefiting from that now, realising that, it's not, as president of the club, it's not me. I'm the director of a board, and I have other directors that work with me. So you don't have to do it by yourself. And I think that's a learning process that, Goody's really come to realise this year, and look where it's gotten us.
What's your relationship with him? What sort of contact? How regular is it?
We're always chatting away or texting away. There, I'm not a president who rings up and says, "Goody, I think you should be playing Maxi at centre forward this week," or whatever. That's not my area of expertise. But I'm more just there for him, check in as I do with all the players and the coaches and the staff. Check in with how they're going. Is there anything more that we can do to help or provide any resources that they need, or, it's more of that supporting sort of role. If there's something we think that's not quite in line with the culture of the club, we'll raise that, but fortunately haven't had to do that as yet this year. So it's really just, as you would with any manager with a staff member, you look out for them, you try to help them and guide them where you can, and be there to be a sounding board at other times. It's, it's a really great relationship that I have with Simon and with the other coaches and the players and with the staff at the club.
What's the craving like in your Melbourne community, Kate, that you'd be tapped into it? We get the feel for it every day, the beautiful emails and the texts that are coming through. How dialed into it are you?
Look, I put a post up. A friend painted their front door, and I posted it on my LinkedIn to say, this is the true, red and blue we can't be here, but people in Melbourne are paying their dollars. I think now, I just checked this morning, it's had 58,000 or so views so far. So it's I checked that in. It gives me a reading on how things are going. People are posting their pictures and things up there. I've got Jane Nathan, who is a stalwart supporter. She was there in '64. She was 14 years old. She tells me she's painted her car Demons colours. So it's just fantastic. I mean, it is so sad that our members who've waited so long, we're not playing at the G at home in front of them, but I know the boys will be, absolutely focused on doing the next best thing, which is winning on Saturday and bringing the Premiership Cup home so we can all relive it when we get out of lockdown.
So, Kate, when does your Demon journey start? And it corresponds with your move to Melbourne, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm a country kid from New South Wales, actually, so we were League and Union. I grew up closer to the Queensland border than Sydney, so AFL certainly wasn't really heard of when I grew up, and was just starting to come to the fore as I sort of finished high school in Narrabri. And when I came down to Melbourne, of course, the first thing everyone says is you've got to have a team, and when you're not born into it or don't have a particular reason for supporting a team, you've got to choose, and everybody tries to get you on their side. But I had some very good close colleagues who said, Melbourne, and they were on the bottom of the ladder. So I thought, we'll go with the underdog. So Melbourne it was. So coming from outside, I have to say, outside of Victoria, you really get a sense of just how big AFL is, and you don't understand it. I think even if you live in Victoria, you certainly don't understand it if you haven't come from outside and lived here. To see just, it is quite, I've worked in sport all my life, and it's quite astounding just how big it is here in Victoria.
Why not join over 1 million traders globally who've already chosen CMC Markets? CMC Markets support you whenever the markets are open with award-winning platforms backed by 30 years experience. So trade your way. Visit cmcmarkets.com.
All trading involves risks.
So with those fresh set of eyes, how intrinsic do you think it is to life in Melbourne, the footy?
Oh, absolutely. If I work in sport. I came to Victoria to take up a role as the CEO of Vic Sport. So if I didn't have an AFL team, I wouldn't have had anything to talk about on not just Monday morning, but right through until Wednesday afternoon. You get a bit of a break, and then Thursday you start off with what's coming up this weekend. So it really is, but it's a different thing. I chair other boards. I've been a corporate director for a long time, but the presidency of a football club is just so unique. I mean, it's something that, you just can't even explain just how important it is to so many people to lead these clubs. It's not the size of the club. It's not in terms of financial or the size of the organisation, but it's it's just the membership and the belief and what these clubs can do off the field. People always ask me, what's the proudest thing of being president of the club, and I say it's what we do off the field. It's things like grassing the Sanatories Oval in Alice Springs with money that's raised by members, or it's videos that our players will send off to people who are unwell, or things like that. It's the things we do off the field that make me proudest, and I think that's what being a football club in Victoria really is all about. It's just so much more than what happens on the field.
Has it changed your football watching experience now that you're president?
Yeah, I have to say, people ask me what am I like as a watcher. I have to say, funnily enough, I seem to be a little bit calmer.
Yep.
And I think that's because I have, so much more involvement in, what's happening. While I don't, give my opinion on what should happen on the field, I, understand, talk to the coaches about what they're trying to do and whether we're delivering and executing. And as well, for me, it's, we've got other business to attend to. So as soon as Saturday's over and we hopefully get over the joy of that, then it's back to AFLW season and our facilities development and other things that just keep going on. So I think in a strange way I've become more composed, I guess, because I'm actually a bigger part of what we're doing. Having said that, don't try and interview me on Saturday morning, Joe. I'm not sure how well I'll go then. I'm okay now where I'm out in the country and away from that hustle and bustle. But yeah, it brings a different perspective to it. I still try not to determine whether the game's going to be won or lost in the first 5 minutes.
Yes. Yeah, the affliction of every supporter is there somewhere.
Exactly.
So I heard you say that you knew Peggy O'Neill in previous business activities and the like. How What sort of inspiration or support or resource has she been to you as you've come to the Melbourne presidency?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Peggy's been fantastic, and even before that, I mean, there still aren't many female directors, so we have a female directors get together, and Peggy's, she sort of, bless her, runs the spreadsheet and the coordinating for that. But I've been a first female of a board that looks after shipping channels, for example. So when you're in that sort of area as first females doing things, you naturally tend to gravitate towards speaking to each other about what it's like and experiences, and even just talking about, other things in general. So I've spoken to Peggy for many years about different things, and certainly as Kylie and I have both taken over in presidential roles, I know there's no one that's more delighted than Peggy, because she, I think she said to me, I'd be devastated if she finished up as president and there wasn't a female, in situ at one of the clubs. And she said, now I've got two. So she's really, proud of the fact that there are more women coming through. And there's no doubt that Peggy's had a huge role to play in that. And, a lot of people reach out and speak to Peggy, but I certainly do. And, she's always fantastic, giving a bit of input and insight into, just what it would be like in grand final week. Now, nobody knew what it would be like here, but she said, just try and enjoy it. She said, but take it slowly, because otherwise you're exhausted by the time you get to the game. But she's fantastic, and I think we all know that Peggy will leave a huge legacy in the AFL world in particular, but just in women's progression up these ladders in general.
So much of what we've seen in recent times in footy, a lot of the analysis is the X's and the O's and the way the game is played, and yet there's a clear and obvious connection between culture and alignment and connection, and maybe it even is something a little bit spiritual as well. How would you define that in what you've seen as to how it all comes together to produce the right X's and O's out on the field?
Yeah, it's a strange thing, isn't it? We talk about it on the sports scientist by background. We talk about the flow state, or when everything just clicks, and I think that's what we're seeing now with the Melbourne Football Club is a long journey. I mean, I've been on the board for 8 years, and we've certainly rebuilt the list, and we brought these players through together, and a lot of that, being able to execute on the field is experience and mental toughness. But there also comes a time, and I think this is what's happening now, that final piece of the puzzle, when you start to realise that it isn't about self, and it isn't about you winning the game, it isn't about you over-executing or trying to do everything. It's actually about trusting the team and trusting everyone to know their role and play their role. I think that's what we're seeing now, and that's what the selflessness you talk about when you're commentating or listening to games. You say, the selflessness is there. It's not silly selflessness, but it's understanding that it doesn't matter if I kick 5 or 6 goals, so long as we win the match. And I think that's the cultural maturity that you're starting to see at Melbourne, and that's what's really coming across on the field. If Clary has a great game one week and Christian has it the next week, and then we see an absolute ripper like Maxie played a couple of weeks ago, then that's okay. You don't have to do it every week, because there'll be someone who does it. And, I think that is a cultural, mental, I don't know what it is, Jared, universal energy, whatever it is, but it seems to be clicking for us now.
There should be something mystical in sport, and I reckon there is. Kate, it's great to catch up. Good luck with your last 24 hours or so, and enjoy release into the world.
Absolutely. I'll be looking forward to that haircut, as all Melburnians will fully understand.
Good on you. Kate Roffey is the president of Melbourne. She joins me from quarantine in Western Australia. Now, did we just get hit by an earthquake? That was amazing. 0433 98 11 16. Did that just happen everywhere? The building fully shook. The glasses on the shelf are rocking back and forwards. I've never felt a tremor like that in Melbourne before. Are we all in? Did we all feel that? That was a proper earthquake. Blimey. I had organised to talk to Josh Bruce about packing merchandise and the like. Josh, great to have you on the program.
G'day, Jared. How are you, mate?
Did you feel that earthquake?
Oh, my God. Yeah, I was sitting in the car, just parked on Beach Road at some traffic lights, just like the previous caller. And yeah, the car just started shaking. I was like, side to side, side to side. I was like, that's weird. Like, I was at a standstill. And then my wife called me and she just sprinted in and got our son out of the cot because the whole house was shaking and dust falling from the roof. She thought it was going to fall down. So he was asleep. So, yeah, pretty scary. God.
Good Lord. Good Lord.
And I've got friends. I got friends back home in Canberra who said they felt it as well. So it must have hit a lot of the East Coast.
Jeepers.
They messaged kind of simultaneously. So it's, first one I've ever felt. It's very scary. Hope everyone's okay.
Yeah. These are strange times. Hey, Josh, I wanted to have a chat. We saw the picture tweeted by the chief executive a couple of days ago that you're in at the club packing merchandise, which I think is the most beautiful image. How are you keeping yourself busy this week?
Anything to get out of the house, Aaron, as you know. No, it's. I was. I was in at the club doing some rehab stuff on my knee, and I'm doing some coaching with the AFL Women's as well. So I had a little bit of time to kill in between those two things, and the guys up there are just getting absolutely smashed with merchandise purchases, which is just fantastic to see. And the entire Barker's cafe there is just awash with merchandise and postage and all sorts of stuff. So I sat down for a little bit of time and had a chin wag and helped them out a little bit. I mean, I definitely wasn't there for 8 hours, and Bainesy put a little bit of mayo on it, that's for sure. But it's really good, and they're doing a fantastic job, and the members are coming out in full force.
So there's a tyranny to being separated from it at this time, Josh, but there's a clear connection that you've been able to maintain. How are you finding it?
Yeah, I mean, it obviously is extremely difficult at times. The 2 hours on game day are the hardest, and then, the hour afterwards, especially after the victories that we've been having, are really tough not to be there and be involved and feel that in person. Even on the sidelines as an injured player, it would be great to just be there and experience it. But obviously I'm not the only person that's, made sacrifices this season, and I'm just so proud of, of the group and of the players and of the staff and everyone that's, given up their time and spent time away from their families and loved ones to help us get to where the team is this weekend.
Are you having emotional fluctuations, given that it's a 10-year career that's taken you through a few twists and turns, and just how close you were to it?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, big time. And obviously, it's only natural to feel a tinge of sadness and a tinge of jealousy. And there was games where I burst into tears after the Brisbane game. I just burst into tears at the final try, and I couldn't hold it back. I just felt, just such a longing to be there and to be involved in finals like that. I feel like that, I thought that this year was going to be the year for me. Everything seemed to be lining up perfectly, and to have it ripped away at the last minute, it's been bloody tough to deal with. But, I've had nearly 2 months now to kind of process a little bit, and, I still have moments in every single day, but it is getting slightly easier, and I've moved on to just wishing the team to have as much success as we can, and I know that we're such a young side, so fingers crossed everything goes well and I can get back in next year and have another tilt at it.
Do you have to go through a grieving process with it, Josh, as it happens in the dying seconds of a game so late in the season? I don't imagine there's really any rationalising it. How do you work through it?
Yeah, it is like a grieving process. I mean, I've had close friends and loved ones obviously pass away, but it's not similar to that. But the grieving process is tough. Like when they did the initial test on my knee, and I just knew it wasn't there. It was fully ruptured. I broke down for an hour and a half, and then, once I got that initial hysterics out of the way, I felt a little bit better. And then, I've cried probably at least every week about it.
Yep.
So
Yep.
It does get easier with time, as all things do. So.
Have you had any conversations or any messages that in particular have resonated with you and you've drawn some level of comfort or guidance from?
Yeah, I mean, I've had some really, really amazing messages from people. The people and the community that have reached out to me is just, it's really humbling. One in particular was Chris Grant. Obviously, he's the director of football at the Dogs. He messaged me about a week in and, kind of explained to me that he did his knee at the same time at 29 years old. And, he at the time thought that maybe it was curtains on his career. But it ended up being a really powerful thing for him, and it actually prolonged his career for another 5 or 6 years. And it was a really special message to get from someone that I respect so much and has achieved so much in his career. And then, some of the other coaches that I've had have reached out to me. Obviously, Choco Williams is coaching with Melbourne this weekend, but he was my initial head coach of the Giants, and I had some really tough times with the Giants. I probably wasn't developing as well as I should have. My professionalism definitely wasn't up to standard. In my first few years, I didn't really know what it took, and he sent me a really beautiful message about how much I've developed as a person and as a player, and just to hear that from some of the guys it's really humbling to know that it's definitely not all doom and gloom. So.
Yeah. So how will Saturday night look for you? Have you thought about it? Are you trying not to? Do you have a bit of a plan? What's your approach going to be to the grand final itself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. It's obviously it's going to be a long day waiting for a night game, but I think I'm going to try and watch it just with some friends and family. Lim Jong lives in the area. He's another freshly retired player, so I might try and watch it with him and have a couple of beers and just try and relax and watch it as a spectator. It's going to be tough either way, but hopefully we can get over the line.
And you found yourself drawn into the overall debate about medals for members of the team and for the overall. Have you actually got a firm position on that, or have you been drawn into that sort of unwittingly?
I did get sucked in a little bit, and I was tongue-in-cheek with the way that I was saying it, but I think that it's probably tradition has to stand. I think, there's hard luck stories, and there's been hard luck stories for the last, however long. So I think that, the 22 or 23 guys that run out there are the ones that do really win it. So, and I think now that it's funny, like if I did actually get presented with a medal now, I'd almost feel like I didn't deserve it. So it's kind of an interesting one at times. So.
It is. It's for the overall, I think, rather than for the individuals who find themselves, unfortunately, in the position. Josh, thanks for taking the call. Safe travels. Yes, check in at home. And it's been great to see the connection to the club. That's the FaceTimes during the songs and the like. It's been quite brilliant. So good luck with the rest of it.
Thanks, Jared. Good luck with the earthquake.
Yes, thank you. Josh Bruce with us this morning. So I'm really pleased that he was able to take that call.
Preparing Mars Shuttle 1. We have liftoff in 3, 2,
Houston,
1.
Permission to abort.
Shuttle 1, is there a problem?
Well, it's just, we're still alive in the quaddie here.
Why didn't you say anything?
The first 2 legs are the faves, so we didn't want to make a big deal,
10-4, launch delayed.
Introducing Sportsbet's new Bet with Mates. Start your group, bet together and share the moment. Conditions apply. Gamble responsibly. 1-800-858-858.
These are unnatural times. It's the only conclusion to draw. It's grand final week and we're removed from it. There's been an earthquake. The city's under siege. We rely on experience at times like this. Mike Sheehan, welcome.
Hello, Jared. Am I the earthquake specialist?
What is happening in our city?
I don't know. It is a weird week, isn't it? Last week, the grand final wasn't played here, but it was more normal. But I was just coming in on the tram this morning. Not much colour. Everyone preoccupied with the earthquake, as they're entitled to be. But the game just now seems so far away. I don't mean in time. I'm talking about geographically.
Yep. Did you feel the earthquake?
Yeah, I did. I shouldn't tell you. I was in the shower, actually, and I thought the kids have been coming in and out, and I thought someone was in the kitchen had dropped something big. So I called out, no answer, and I didn't know anything until I got some text messages.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Terry Wallace texted me last week. He said, you should go back to the time of Norm Smith's sacking. And then if you believe in the sporting gods, and I do, well, there have to be curses and there have to be hexes and there have to be jinxes. And it's not quite as So in the US, this is the driver of all things. The Curse of the Bambino is a beautiful part of their sporting narrative, and it ends in glorious style when finally they rise above in 2004 and movies are made and documentaries are made. It's not quite that here, although I suspect for decades it probably was.
We've got our own version, the Collywobbles.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, there's no question, and I'm a big believer in karma. I don't know why. There's no scientific basis for this, but just things happen for some obscure reason. And I believe in the karma bus, and I think now the bus driver has decided to turn left and head for Melbourne, hopefully.
So we go back in time to 1965 and Tony Charlton's football show. There's a 6.5-minute clip on YouTube, and once we're done through our half hour here, I couldn't recommend it to you enough. It is the most magnificent time capsule of Australiana, of football, and of what was declared the most explosive story in football history, which must still have a claim to it now.
Yeah, no, I saw that interview. You know, sometimes, and particularly this time, I'm wrestling with, did I actually see it or did I read it so often that it just became ingrained? But I do remember seeing it was like a state funeral. And Tony Charlton was perfectly equipped to handle the interview. He was a friend of Norm Smith's, and he just captured the moment, and it was gripping television. You know, those footy shows of the time were very loose. I mean, the people spoke over each other, and the crosses were all sloppy and all that sort of stuff. But this one, everyone just held their breath for 6 or 7 minutes.
Here's an encapsulation of what was taking place that Sunday lunchtime.
Tony Charlton's football show.
On Friday night at 8 o'clock, Norman Smith received a letter sent by special delivery. The letter produced the bombshell that his appointment as coach of the strongest football club in the history of the game was cancelled as from that date.
Well, it starts back, I'd say a year or two ago. I think when the committee failed to support me or give me the support that I wanted in this writ action, it was unacceptable to me that I could work with men who wouldn't back me, men who would expect me to get the utmost from the players and demand from the players the loyalty and support, and at the other end of the line were not prepared to give me their support. That's where it started. I spoke to Len and I said, I think I'll offer my resignation. And Len said to me, don't be a fool, you owe it to the boys to keep coaching. And I felt that this was so. So he said, eat humble pie. Ever eaten humble pie? It's got an awful taste, but I ate humble pie and I tricked the committee. They expected me to blow up and they had the opportunity. Well, instead of that happening there and then, they waited for something else to happen. And it didn't happen. So then they created 2 lies. They created 2 lies and put it in writing and sent it out by special messenger just to get rid of me. No, I think there was 2 images of Melbourne that certain people wanted to destroy. In one sense it was Ronnie, and then I think the other sense it's me. I'm Melbourne at this stage, Tony, I'm Melbourne. I'm Melbourne, and I am Melbourne, and I'm Melbourne through and through.
Oh, the gravity of it.
I know. It takes me back. That's all those years to listening to him. And it was a sort of a master-servant relationship then, Jared. The MCC was the uppity crew. I mean, they were born to rule. And I think that they just, when Smith challenged them, as he could, because he had an acid tongue, and he was very independent, I think then someone or a group of them sort of said, we need to put this bloke back in his box.
So Ray Groom lived this. In 1965, he was wearing the number 31 of Ron Barassi, which was seismic in its own right. He went on to serve as the Premier of Tasmania. Ray, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks for joining us.
G'day, Jared. G'day, Mike.
Hi, Ray.
Pleased to be here.
How vivid are those days for you?
Gosh, it makes me feel quite emotional hearing Norm's comments. When you listen to him, you can tell that he was a very good speaker. It was a dramatic time. It's just a terrible time for a young player. I was just turned 20 at 19 or 20, or just 20 yet. And, I couldn't quite understand what was going on. It shattered the club. It was sort of in pieces, really, from that point on for probably 50 years. But I think we're now recovering. I'd like to talk about the curse being over.
We all would, Ray.
genuinely believe it is. Frankly.
Let's stay with that period though for a moment. We knew that the letter was hand delivered to Norm from the Melbourne Cricket Club. That was a Friday night, wasn't it?
That was Friday night.
Yeah. Now
that was a very weak thing to do for a board.
Agree.
To just convey the message by way of letter and a courier.
Were you playing the next day?
Yes. We played North Melbourne at the old
Coburg
Oval, because that was a temporary oval. So I played that day. Checker Hughes was the coach. I can recall Checker in his gabardine coat and a hat on, and I think he had a walking stick at the time. I think he was 77.
He was, yes.
Thereabouts, and everyone was flat. The boys were all flat.
So when did you hear about it, Ray? You're playing at Coburg at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. When did you learn that...
I had a call from Hassaman at home. I was in a flat with my mother and younger sister. I had a call from Hassa that night, just sort of briefly explaining. He was in a state of shock. I was too. Then the next morning I got a telegram. We used to have telegrams in those days. A telegram advising me to attend a players' meeting at the ground. I think it was 10:30 next morning, the Saturday morning, before the game against North.
And the telegram said?
And the telegram said there's a players' meeting on. It was all in the news, so we knew what was going on by the next morning, and that we shouldn't speak to the media, but we should come straight to the ground to discuss what had happened. And from memory, Dr. Don Duffy, who was the chairman, spoke to us, and also Jim Cardwell, then the secretary of the club, gave us a bit of a talk. But we were all very flat, I can tell you now, very puzzled about what was going on, and quite shocked, actually.
Do you believe in curses, Ray? I mean, we talk about it loosely. Do you?
Well, I didn't believe them until this one happened. I think there has been a curse, to be quite frank. I think it lasted 50 years until Peter Jackson became CEO, and sort of we've built up since then. There's been a sort of strong foundation that the club has stabilised, but it lasted 50 years. I mean, the club was shattered into little pieces, and there was division in the club. Some weren't talking to others, and so on. You can't have a club divided, can you?
No, you can't.
Anything.
The only thing
together.
I'm with you a bit on the curse and the karma, but is it a cop-out? Does it cover the inadequacies of the subsequent administrations at the footy club?
Well, there were certainly inadequacies, but there was a feeling there that remained in the club. It was sort of hanging around, sort of like haunting us, really. And I've sort of suffered every year since, sort of hoping we were going to do well, and we didn't achieve what we wanted to achieve. But I have to say, I mentioned Jackson being appointed, and the Paul Roos decision to get him in, and then there's been a smooth transition to Gary Purton to Goodwin as coach. I think he would prove to be an outstanding coach. But I think the turning point, and I make this point, I reckon the Norm Smith curse is dead, and it's dead from the point when Max Gawn kicked that goal in the final match of the home and away season against Geelong, which put us at the top of the ladder, first time since '64. The boys ran into Max and jumped all around him. They didn't realise at the time, but that's when the curse died. I reckon the curse is dead.
We hope.
It's gone. It's gone forever.
That's beautiful, Ray. You're giving me goosebumps just saying it. Are you about to travel over to the West? Are you going to see it firsthand?
Well, I feel very fortunate being in Tasmania and Hobart here, and we fly off later on today to Perth, direct flight from Hobart to Perth. And, I feel very privileged to be able, because all the mates, all the teammates are locked away in Melbourne and can't go across to Perth unless they go into quarantine for 14 days, which is very hard. And, of course, we've lost quite a few of our teammates over the years. But, I'm just sort of so lucky to fly with Jill, the wife, to cross to Perth and to watch the Demons.
Ray, I've always wanted to ask you this question. I haven't crossed paths with you very often. What was the proverbial weight of number 31 when you were so young and immediately after Ron's departure to Carlton?
Well, it was massive. Look, I had number 15. I was quite happy with number 15. And we're in the rooms one day, and Norm said, "Come over here, Ray, and I wanted to talk to you." And he said, "I want you to wear number 31. Well, I have to say I had some doubts as to whether I really should, but because Norm asked me to, and I was very, had a good relationship with Norm, and I respected him. We're speaking about Norm Smith. He was a great person. He was a great Australian. I really respected Norm. He was a tough fellow. But when he said, "Look, Ray, you wear number 31, I thought, hell's bells. I better do it, do the right thing by Norm." But it wasn't easy. It was a burden, I tell you. And I had a bad injury that was a hamstring that was really bad, and you could sort of feel the gap in the hamstring as you put your hand behind your thigh. There it was. These days, I think they'd probably operate. So I carried 31 and had that injury, and it affected me for the next year or two before I finally recovered from it. But I was very pleased, of course. I had lots of time for Ron. I mean, he was fantastic. He was such a dynamic player, wonderful captain, and he was part of our success. Norm and Ron, the duo, were a big part of our success in the 50s and 60s.
Ray, thank you for sharing your reminiscence with us today, and travel well. Enjoy this time in Perth, and I think a lot of us hope you're right, that the curse is dead.
All the best, boys.
Good luck, Ray.
Good on you.
Bye.
Ray Groom. So Hassaman's about to join us. He was the captain, so he had to rally the troops, work out whether they were going to play, and then he was there on that Sunday as well, as was Ron Barassi. So we'll take you to more of the aftermath of Norm Smith's sacking in a moment.
G'day, just letting you know I'm currently watching Sky Racing on the Sportsbet app live from this hairdresser. You beauty!
Thanks, babe.
Watch Aussie racing anywhere with Sportsbet. Conditions apply and gamble responsibly. 1-800-858-858.
The sacking that shook the football world in 1965 and cast the curse of Norm Smith. So more from the Tony Charlton football show, where Ron Barassi, who had moved to Carlton, came into the studio, and Hassaman, who was the Demons captain.
I would say one thing. Everyone knows it's a tragedy what has happened. But the thing that I feel is grossly unjust is the allegations that the club have made on Norm Smith's character, which I feel is wrong, and I can't understand any committee coming to this decision and allegation after knowing the man the way they have. He's been at Melbourne almost 30 years, and he's been straight and honest all those 30 years. And even if it were true, and it's not, of course, but even if it were, I mean, the fact that they didn't give him a chance or any way at all, it's beyond me, and it's a pity such a great club has seen fit to do such a thing.
Do you think the wound can be healed?
No.
It made for fiery Sunday lunchtime TV. The previous day, Melbourne had lost to North Melbourne at the Coburg ground, the Demons under the ageing Checker Hughes. That night, the team had visited Smith's home. Later, they would attend a dance at the club. The position of the players was never in doubt. On the Sunday morning, skipper Hassaman, vice-captain Brian Keneally and rover Johnny Townsend were in the studios.
I rang all players yesterday morning, and I was in touch with all players before 9:30 yesterday morning, and not one player mentioned to me that they would not play on Saturday afternoon.
The voice of Hassaman then, and Mike Hassa is with us now. Hassaman, great to have you back on SEN.
Good morning, Gerard.
How vividly do you recall that Sunday and that Tony Charlton football show, given the events that had transpired?
Recall it quite vividly, Gerard, because it was an issue that I think rocked the football world and certainly rocked us as players, because, as you were aware, I was actually talking to Norm on the Friday night when the messenger arrived. A telegram arrived, and it was, we were talking about the game the following day, and then I heard the doorbell ring, and we finished the conversation. Norm came back a couple of minutes later and told us that he'd been sacked, and it was just unbelievable. Just unbelievable.
Hassa, good morning to you. What do you think precipitated the Melbourne Cricket Club decision to dismiss the coach who'd won 6 premierships in 10 years? Norm believes it was the lack of support over the Don Blue defamation case, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think, Mike, there was obviously a build-up of tensions since that the incident with Don Blue, and I also think it was a case that Norm had been, I think, thumping the table with the committee for some time. Norm was concerned about, I guess, we were coming to the end of an era in terms of, the Barassi, the Dixons, all those that played with Melbourne and started with Melbourne back in the 1952-53. And Norm could see that Melbourne Football Club had to change its attitude with regards to recruiting players. Other clubs had started to buy in players from interstate, and Melbourne Football Club at that stage were not into contracts and didn't believe in contracts, and Norm could see that they had to change, and this tension was building up. Norm was thumping the table. The committee was sort of refusing to listen. I think a number of committee people felt that Norm had a bit of a big head, that he was sort of the coach, a successful coach, and I think there was just a build-up of all of those things that caused this tension. Look, I don't know. I tried to find out through Ian Ridley. The only person who knew the real reasons for the sackings was Ian Ridley, who was secretary to the committee when the decision was made. And for credit for Ian, Ian never, ever released what the main reasons were.
Hassa, there's a school of thought that the committee was angry with Norm because Norm didn't try to convince Ron to stay at Melbourne rather than go to Carlton and take the coaching job.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, that was incorrect, because I believe Norm offered to stand aside for Ron.
You can't do much more than that, can you?
No. It was my firm understanding that Norm offered to do that. But Ron, of course, being strong-headed Ron, realised, and probably correctly so, that if he was going to pursue a coaching career, he should at least start doing it away from the club that he'd played for.
Hassa, I want to ask you about what a terrible waste of talent that we experienced when Norm died at the age of 57. Now, 57 today is barely middle-aged, and he was dead at 57. A huge loss to football, wasn't it?
It certainly was, and I guess we'll never know, Mike, but the tension of that period, the sacking and so forth, undoubtedly had some bearing on, Norm's health. And, he suffered a couple of heart attacks, and when it eventually happened, it was a great shock to the football community.
The industry says that Len Smith was the master tactician. That's Norm's brother Len, and that Norm was sort of more of a rabble-rouser. Is that fair to Norm? I read the Red Fox, and I thought Norm's handle on strategy was brilliant.
Yeah, I couldn't argue with that, Mike. My feeling towards Norm Smith. I think whatever I achieved in football, I owe directly to Norm Smith. And saying that, I think that most of the players who played under Norm would have vouched for that also. Norm was probably before his time. I mean, he tried things. He was a very demanding coach, as you know. But players would run through brick walls for Norm Smith, and that's why he was the success behind the success for Melbourne.
Hassa, it's great to talk to you. How will you take Saturday in?
Probably nervously.
Yes.
Undoubtedly, it was interesting. Last Friday night when they played their last game, I was pretty okay until about 6:30, and then I was thinking about the young players and what was in front of them, and well, even now, so many of them, all of them except one, are playing in the final series probably for the first time, particularly in the grand final. And my only concern really at this point in time is that having lived in a hub for so long, having eat, sleep and talk football for the last fortnight or 3 weeks is a drain, or can be a drain. And I only hope that the players don't play their game before they hit the ground on Saturday.
Can you confirm one thing? Sorry, Hassa, you go.
I was just saying that their form, if they can reproduce what they did against Geelong, then they're going to be very, very hard to beat.
Are you prepared to share my view that this is the most accomplished Melbourne team in the past 50 years?
Oh, undoubtedly, Mike. I think their performance against Geelong was perhaps the best Melbourne performance that I'd seen. Wow. Undoubtedly, we would have played some pretty good football, I guess, in that golden era. But the way in which they played the whole game against Geelong was first class. And as I say, I think it's the best Melbourne performance that I've ever seen.
Hassa, it's great to have your time this morning. Thanks a lot for taking our call.
Okay, Jared, no problems.
Thanks, Hassa.
Go D's.
Yes, indeed, go D. So Hassa was the captain. Now, Greg Hobbs was a great mentor of yours,
he was,
Mike.
Yes.
So he documented for 50 years as one of the great footy writers, one of the great sports writers in Melbourne. Greg, great to have your contribution to the curse of Norm Smith.
Thank you.
Did you believe in it, Greg? Did you believe that Melbourne's misfortunes could be traced back to that sacking?
Well, history says it does, but look, I don't know. I remember the sacking so well. I remember the Tony Charlton show on the Sunday with Marge Smith crying on Norm's shoulder on the show. It was unbelievable. It was the greatest, television you've ever seen in football. I don't know about that. Norm was a great man, and I loved Norm, even though I was petrified of him when I was a young boy, as a young reporter. But we became good mates in the end, and he was fantastic. I think one of the reasons why they kicked him out was he wouldn't sort of kowtow to the high and mighty of the Melbourne Cricket Club. The officials there. He was rough as guts as far as they were concerned, and they just didn't mix. Even though he had great success. How are you?
Good morning, Gregory.
Thank you.
He was from Northcote, Norm, wasn't he? Was he a welder? He was a tradie of sorts, wasn't he?
He worked in Miller's Ropes, I think.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, Miller's Ropes.
Now, what made him? You knew him quite well, and it's interesting for me to hear from you that you were scared of someone. But what made Norm Smith the institution that he was?
He was just so hard, and he was fair. But look, I really don't know. All I know, he was a great player. He was a great full forward for Melbourne, but people have forgotten about. They just think he's a coach. No, he was a great player. But he was just so straight, hard, and focused. Whether he was the best coach of all time, I think he was. He was in the AFL team of the century. And it's just unbelievable to think of a team like Melbourne, who virtually hijacked all the 1950s with their premierships to the extent where people were just barracking against Melbourne because they were winning so much. It became an anti-Melbourne, whether you liked it, barrack whoever you barrack for.
Hobbsy, in 1965, they were 9-3. They're the reigning premier, and they have 9 wins and 3 losses from 12 games, and he's sacked. And he's reinstated X days, 3 or 4 days later. Was that that was the committee had to eat humble pie, didn't it?
They did. I remember when he was sacked. I think I was at the West Melbourne Stadium. It was fight night. I think Jack Dunn of the Sun.
Friday night.
Jack Dunn of the Sun cracked the story, and I was on the age. God, I can't remember what happened. I think we pinched it out of the first edition, but. I just can't remember, but I know Jack got the story at the stadium.
Don't say that. Jack's gone. Say you broke it.
I told Jack.
But it was what was, and I didn't live this, but how could they have turned their back on this momentous decision to sack Norm Smith? And I think it was only 4 days later, wasn't it, that he was reinstated?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit vague, all that. It was unbelievable, I know. I know that they went out to played at Coburg or somewhere the day he was sacked.
Yep.
But by the following Saturday, he's back in harness.
Now, Hobbsy, you are...
I just can't remember what happened. Dr. Duffy was president.
That's
from
right.
memory.
You are one of the great pragmatists of our industry. Do you believe in curses?
Oh, not really.
I knew you wouldn't.
Things happen.
And a lot of things happen.
Look, I believe in karma. I do think that the curse is a convenient excuse for incompetent administration for a long time. But you live this now. If you can take your mind back to the early '60s, that this club that had won 6 out of 10 premierships wouldn't win for at least another 57 years. Inconceivable, wasn't it?
Whoever would have thought that when Crompton, who was a back pocket player, Neil Crompton, kicked that goal for Melbourne, that would be the last premiership they'd have until maybe Saturday.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, really. And he shouldn't have been where he was, Crompton, either, because he was looking for his row with the bloke he was on. He was wandering around centre half forward somewhere, and I think Norm Smith gave him a pay after the game for being out of position.
That's excellent. Greg, great to have your input, Greg. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Hobbsy.
Okay, mate.
So the memories of Ray Groom, Hassaman, Greg Hobbs and Mike Sheehan. So, Mike, with all of that as the backdrop, the curse of Norm Smith, whether you are or you aren't, what would it lay to rest if this happens on Saturday night in Melbourne in the 57-year drought?
I don't know what it lays to. I do know that it would be one of the great romantic stories of this tough industry that's AFL football. The best day of my reporting life, Jared, was the day the Bulldogs won in 2016. Yep. And I was sitting in the back row in the AFL section. Gillen went past. He said, "How good was that?" I said, "It's the most exciting day of my sporting career." Yep. So I love those stories. I mean, I barrack for the story. And Melbourne will be similar to what the Doggies were. First time since 54 for the Doggies. First time since 64 for Melbourne.
Yes, yes. I feel exactly the same way as the 2016 final series is the best one I've had the privilege to call. And the zenith for me was preliminary final night. I felt like it was a certainty that the Dogs would win grand final day because I believe in the fates. Yeah. So I thought it was going to happen. I spent the morning with Bob Murphy at his home before he headed into the ground, and he convinced me. It was just...
fated. Yeah.
Fated, yeah. And maybe after so much pain, maybe it's fated again. And we have seen droughts end. We've seen the Swans and Geelong and Richmond and the Bulldogs and there is a craving that Melbourne ends as well.
My desire would be clearly Melbourne to win this week, St Kilda to win next year, and then I'm okay. I don't care what happens after
Everyone else can please themselves. Yeah. Hey, Mike, thanks for coming in.
Pleasure, Jared.
It's great to tap your experience for these things, the curse of Norm Smith. And a big thanks to Terry Wallace, who triggered my memory to do that, and Tony Charlton's work. I got to know Tony after he'd retired, and it was interesting that I didn't live any of his work and yet ended up knowing it so well. And it's a moment that is the core of his work that has him in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, true. And he was that was his highlight, clearly, but he was a very accomplished and a great man. I loved time with Tony.
Good stuff.
Just letting you know, I'm currently watching Sky Racing on the Sportsbet app live from Square Leg. No, they won't catch him. He's home. Oh, sorry. Watch Aussie Racing anywhere with Sportsbet. Conditions apply and gamble responsibly. 1-800-858-858.
The trade bell, he was so good yesterday. Fox Footy's senior AFL reporter Tom Morris that we demanded he return. Tom, great to have you here.
Thanks, Jared. Good to be back. Can I just say one thing about Norm Smith? Yeah. When you're in the MCC above the Percy Beams bar and you're walking along and you see Melbourne's team of the century, Norm Smith is the coach and he's coaching himself. He's sitting in front of himself as a player, and I love that about Norm Smith.
Could you imagine covering that story? So there are stories that feel seismic, and then you go back and immerse yourself in that and go, no, it probably still is the biggest story in footy history.
That's as big as it gets. There was a video made in 1996, 100 Years of Australian Football, that I watched religiously as a kid, and it was the centerpiece of that video. Also, good use of the word seismic as well, given the situation of the day with the earthquake.
Today. All right. We're going to focus on Carlton as a starting point here because Sam Petrevski-Seton was the news after you left us yesterday. He is requesting a trade back to Western Australia and specifically to West Coast, which, from what I can tell, is the source of some angst with Blues supporters who are hoping it might have been much more simple if he'd gone for the Dockers.
That's right. I don't think Fremantle were that keen on Petreski-Seton. I think they would have taken him for nothing, but I'm not sure they made a huge pitch towards him. So he prefers West Coast, and West Coast has pick 10, which is clearly too high for Petreski-Seton, even though he was pick 6 in 2016. It's just worth noting how he was flicked around positionally at Carlton. Last year, I spoke to Champion Data this morning. Last year, he played 44% in defence. This year, 28% defence and 28% midfield. So he really couldn't find a home. West Coast sees him as a midfielder, and they want him replacing, Luke Shuey when he retires, getting inside that engine room. So West Coast has picked 10. They've also got 2 second rounders, and I think one of these 2 picks will get it done, 29 and 35. Yep. I don't think Carlton's going to play too hardball on this because they know that they probably, if they were going to give Petreski-Seton a contract, it wouldn't have been a big contract. It might have been just a 1-year deal. So he wasn't necessarily a hugely required player for them.
So 29 is there and 35 relates to a trade from the previous year. It's Port Adelaide's pick.
That's right. And pick 49 as well, which was received from Sydney last year. Now, there's news about Jared Brander as well from West Coast, who I think in any other, not era, maybe 2 years before COVID, before COVID hit, Jared Brander would have been a pretty attractive commodity for most clubs, key position player, 4 years in the system. But I'm not sure Carlton needed Jared Brander, so I'm not sure that he is going to come into trade discussions here. So it's a second rounder, and Carlton fans will go, he was pick 6. He was pick 6, but he hasn't really been a key part of the team for a couple of years.
And he's not going to West Coast for big money.
Not at all. They don't have any money, Jared. Yeah. That Shannon Hearn and Josh Kennedy and Liam Duggan are all taking big pay cuts. Jack Redden as well. So they have no money. So he's going there literally for a new home for a fresh start.
So a contribution being made by Brad, and so we have a couple of categories. One is take it to the bank, which people are taking liberties with, but I sort of love you for it.
Yep.
Take it to the bank. Paddy Dow to Richmond for a late second-round pick to play with his brother.
Paddy Dow's a contracted player, so it's very hard to say that's going to happen. I haven't heard it, Jared, but I wouldn't discount it completely. It depends on who comes in, but it's nice romanticism, isn't it, to play with his brother?
And then someone's sent through a few times.
Yeah.
Sam Petreski-Seton to West Coast. Petruccelli to Carlton. He's a Northern Knights boy. There's no equality in that.
Not at all.
That's in the wishful thinking category.
Nice try.
What of the Carlton coaching position?
So I still think it's going to be Michael Voss. I said that on Monday. I still believe that. My point on Monday is that the panel's preferred position was Michael Voss. Now, clearly that has to go through the board and Brian Cook, who's on this panel as well, but I believe Greg Williams prefers Michael Voss over Adam Kingsley. And it's a brave CEO to go against the person that's been appointed to run the process. So that could be done as soon as this week. If it is, then that will probably be today or tomorrow. I can't imagine them appointing him on Friday before a Saturday grand final, if not early next week. But I'm still convinced it's going to be Michael Voss. Nothing has changed in my mind from what I said on Monday.
Okay, so the other piece to Carlton is Adam Cerra, which has been a constant in our trade bell for a couple of weeks now. You've turned your mind to what do they need to make this happen?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one for Carlton. If you cast your mind back to 2019, admittedly before list manager Nick Austin came to the club, they couldn't get Tom Papley through the door. And look what Tom Papley's become. He's an All-Australian. He's a dominant player for the Sydney Swans, and he would be a great player at Carlton. So they couldn't get it done. And then they gave up too much, in most people's views, for Zach Williams financially and Adam Sard from Essendon. Pick 8. I know there were some late pick swaps there, but essentially pick 8 for Adam Sard. So it's a tough balancing act for Nick Austin because he doesn't want to miss out on Adam Cerra, but he also doesn't want to give up too much, because if you give up too much, then you risk being in the same position as they are now with Adam Sard. So Fremantle will ask for pick 6, and probably more will be their starting position. The Blues have pick 25, but they're nothing until the 4th round. So what is fair? Well, Cerra was pick 5 in 2017. He's played 76 games in 4 seasons. He's played 21, 2017, 18. So he's dependable, he's reliable. And I think, Jared, it's fair to say that his best is still to come. He also finished 3rd in their best and fairest last year. So Freo's got every right to say, hey, you've given up pick 8 for Adam Sard.
Yep.
Cerra was pick 5, 4 years in the system. We want more than pick 6. And that's the tough balancing act for Nick Austin and Carlton at the moment.
So Michael has turned his mind to this, and he sent through a 5-legger by email.
Not one of your multi-bets that failed in the Brownlow,
So
was it, Jared?
you have to concentrate hard here, Tom, or I'll
Okay.
show you the door if you do that again. Shearer to Carlton for pick 6 and 25.
Yep.
Darcy Tucker to Geelong and Jordan Clark straight swap. Michael Walters and Connor Blakely to Gold Coast for pick 3 to Freo. Pick 3 and 8 for Luke Jackson to Freo. This is where it takes a turn. And Freo then have pick 6 for either Erasmus or Amos.
I was sort of into it until Michael Walters' name was mentioned and Luke Jackson. Jackson's not leaving Melbourne. Walters isn't leaving Fremantle, but I love it. Isn't it amazing how people sit around and work out hypothetical trades?
Well done, Michael.
Yeah, well done.
You sent that a couple of days in a
Good.
row. I'm going to impose a little bit on your time because you've got a nice set of players who are in limbo, which will be of interest. And I don't want you to miss the full experience of the texts that are pouring through, which I might even give you time to have a look at. We are in the trade bell with Tom Morris from Fox Footy. Slightly longer edition, given the time we dedicated to the curse of Norm Smith. I would love to take a call or two on that front, 1300 736 736. Jordan Dawson has chosen Adelaide rather than Port Adelaide, which was an interesting little tidbit when it landed yesterday.
It was. So Adelaide confirmed it, I think, about midday yesterday that he wants to go there. He was an Adelaide supporter growing up. His favourite player was Mark Rasciuto, who was heavily involved in the process to lure him to the club. He toured, I think, the Crows and Port Adelaide in consecutive days last week. But how are they going to get this deal done? I get the feeling this could go deep into the trade period, this sort of arrangement, because the Sydney Swans will play hardball. They're filthy losing a player who finished third in their best and fairest and has maybe 6, 7, 8, 10 years ahead of them. So Adelaide's not going to give up pick 4, and they're not going to give up a future first rounder, partly because they want to use those picks. And if they don't want to use them, they want them to try to lure Lukosius or Isaac Rankin home next year. They don't want to use all their chips now on Jordan Dawson. They do have pick 23. That's not going to be enough for the Swans. They've also got pick 37, which is from Melbourne. And it's probably fair to say, Jared, that when they did that pick swap with Melbourne last year, they would have expected that the pick 37 would be in the mid-20s or mid to high 20s, given how the Demons went. So it's a shame for the Swans that Dawson didn't nominate Port Adelaide because they have pick 16, which I think would have been a lot closer to getting this deal done.
So have you got any theories running?
My theory is that the Swans will say no, 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 and it will go very deep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Adelaide will say no, no, no back as well. So they'll have to get creative. I think a third club might have to get involved. Okay. There might have to be a future swapping of picks. I can't see any players getting involved. This is the trade deal that interests me the most, even more than Adam Cerra, between the Swans and the Crows. Finishing third in the best and fairest and leaving your club, I know for family reasons, to the Crows, that really hurts Sydney.
Players in limbo, and some of these are taken in by the texts that come through. So just walk me through who's in limbo.
I saw a text come through about Trent Dumont and Sean Atley. So they're both in limbo because they don't have contracts for next year. Trent Dumont, or they're both free agents, but there's been some interest from Port Adelaide regarding Trent Dumont. I think Chris Davies, their football manager, confirmed that last week, but they're certainly not going to bend over backwards to go and get him. He's from South Australia, I think, initially. Sean Atley, who's been a warrior, not a warrior, probably a stayer is probably the best way to confirm him for the Kangaroos over several years now. He's just been told you've got to wait, and you've got to wait until we know what our list positions are before we can offer you a contract. And then there's Tom Campbell as well, who's in the same position. At Hawthorn, Oliver Hanrahan and Tim O'Brien are in the same position. Tim O'Brien's a free agent. I think there is some preliminary interest from other clubs, but he again has to wait. He took not Mark of the Year, but he was in the top 3, I think, for Mark of the Year. Hanrahan is well liked by Sam Mitchell, but he's sort of part of that mid-sized half-forward sort of brigade. And then Mason Cox at Collingwood, his future is uncertain. And Jacob Townsend, who played such a good debut game for Gold Coast. Jared, the Gold Coast list situation is so interesting because they have almost no spots on their list. I think they've recontracted 37 or 38 players.
Yep.
Townsend's not one of them. So he's very much on the edge whether he gets another deal or not. And he might have to wait until mid-October to find out.
It does strike me with Sean Atley, he's the poster boy for nondescripts. His entree into mainstream conversation is to become the source of speculation in Trade Week.
That's right.
He's lived his whole career, more than 200 games, as a nondescript.
I think he's played about 240 or 250 games.
Yep.
He's done so well. And he potentially is just a victim of North Melbourne going young and North Melbourne bringing in some players to try to strengthen for next year. But he doesn't know yet, so he's just sitting there and waiting.
John has texted through. English to Freo for Lob and pick 8. Freo will pay 200 grand of salary for Lob.
I don't think the Western Bulldogs, despite Luke Beveridge, his mixed response to Tim English in press conferences, I don't think they're going to let Tim English go this year. I think he's got another year on his contract. Rory Lobb is an intriguing one because he wants to leave Fremantle. And he wants to, even though he's got 2 years left on his contract, he would like to find a new home. He's happy to take less money on a 3-year deal somewhere. As I said to you yesterday, the Gold Coast Suns won't take him because they got Marby O'Trol. North Melbourne won't take him because they're going for Coleman Jones. Essendon isn't particularly interested. But I wouldn't be surprised if Rory Lobb fell to another home somewhere. And I'm not sure if Fremantle's going to pay some of the salary. What I do know is Lobb is happy to take less than the roughly $700,000 he's on per year at the moment.
Daz wants a new category introduced. Hear me out. I don't mind that, Daz. It sort of feels like a huge fiction looming. Hear me out. Could Ben Cunnington be in the conversation the Callum Coleman-Jones trade with Richmond? What Richmond lacks is that exact player.
Yeah, well, I say yes, they would like a player like that, but I can't see North Melbourne letting Ben Cunnington go. Can you, Jared? I know the trade period is crazy and weird things happen, but Ben Cunnington is North Melbourne through and through.
Are you bold enough to take a call or two?
Yeah, let's try.
Let's try. Rob's in Roval. Welcome to the Trade Bell, Rob.
G'day, gents. How you going?
Very well.
Yeah, Tommy, just interested on your thoughts. Is it too simple for the Swans deal for Dawson, to say we'll take 4 and 23 and give them Dawson and pick 12?
I think at the moment it's too simple. I think that's a fair question, though. I think that's what will be proposed in the end. The Adelaide Crows are so determined to keep that pick 4. So I think that will be off the table from the start. I don't think that's a bad deal looking at it from the outside, but I think the Crows will play harder ball than that.
Thanks, Rob. Tom's in Eildon. Welcome, Tom.
Yeah, g'day, fellas. I'm just wondering, Tom, with like the Dogs in line for Sam Darcy as a father-son, they've only got just over 1,000 draft points at the moment. What do they need to do to be able to secure that?
They need more draft points than that. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to play out. They've got a couple of players who are out of contract. Pat Lipinski potentially going to Collingwood. They could get some draft picks back in return, although Collingwood don't want to give up draft picks because they need to get Nick Dacos. So that's one of the things they've got to work through. I don't profess to be a draft expert, that's for sure.
Terrific. Good on you, Tom. Thanks for your call. Let me run these past you, okay? Don't tip into any of these accidentally.
Okay.
John, Kruger and pick 30 to Collingwood for future second-round pick.
Sounds about right. I think Kruger will probably go for a late pick. Whether it's that exact trade, I'm not sure. But I think Kruger will find his way to Collingwood for a late pick, yep.
Any word on Braden Sire leaving or staying at Collingwood?
No, his name gets brought up all the time, and I have no read on. Well, I do have the read is that I don't think he's going to go. I haven't been told he's going to go, so at the moment the status quo is he'll be at the Pies next year.
Rumours circling that Essendon are courting Riley West from the Dogs. Any truth to it?
Essendon are interested in an inside midfielder. That's why I mentioned Luke Dunstan yesterday. I'm not sure Riley West is exactly what they're after. I haven't heard that one specifically, but they are after another midfielder, yep.
Any truth in Elliot Yeo to Port?
No, I haven't heard that, and I'd be surprised if Port Adelaide could afford to have Elliot Yeo. They're pretty tight under the salary cap. Port Adelaide have back-ended lots of their contracts. Tom Cleary, Peter Laddams, there's several others as well. So I'd be surprised if Yeo went to Port, given that he's not only contracted, but he'd probably be worth a fair bit financially.
J-Dog, Dogs need a genuine ruckman and Port Adelaide need more midfield depth. Would Laddams for Lipinski be a viable trade?
Probably viable if you're playing fantasy football manager, but I think Lipinski's going to. I think if he leaves, he's going to Collingwood.
Yep. Okay. GWS pick 2 to North for Goldstein and pick 20.
I think that's highly unlikely, Jared. I think the Giants are taking pick 2 to the draft no matter what.
Mason Cox to Richmond for a tall. That's from Rod.
I think if Mason Cox goes to Richmond, he's probably going via either the preseason draft or the rookie draft. I'm not sure that there's going to be a trade there.
Blues need a replacement for Casbolt. Maybe lob in a deal with Chera for picks 6 and 25. Flipping around.
Let me work that out. Say that again, Jared.
Blues, Casbolt maybe.
Yep.
Sorry. Blues need a replacement for Casbolt. Maybe lob in a deal with Chera for pick 6 and 25.
Yeah, interesting. I think I think Rory Lobb to Carlton is unlikely because look at who they've already got. Harry Mackay, Charlie Curnow. I'm not sure they need another tall unless Rory Lobb wants to play in the ruck, and I don't believe he does. I think he wants to play forward.
And the last one I'll run past you is Aaron Francis to the Crows.
That is one we get every year. That's a bit like the what's the one you said yesterday that Tom Green to Richmond. Aaron Francis is from South Australia. It gets brought up every year. I don't know whether it's going to happen this year. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens at some stage in the future, but I have no read on whether it's going to happen this trade period.
Very good. And I'll read this one out. Hey, Jared, any chance to read this out, please? Why Jared of the Blues got heaps of mids already? Kennedy, Dow, Fisher, Kemp and Stocker need to be given more game time. Plus, we have George Hewitt coming. Plus, we are suspect down back if either Wiedering or Jones go down. Pick 6 needs to be used on a key defender.
Interesting. There's very few key defenders that are taken with pick 6 in the draft. They've got a lot of midfielders, but Cherrett's 4 years into a system and he's finished top 3 in a Fremantle Best and Fairest. I think he undoubtedly makes Carlton a better team.
I'm probably keeping you from your real job, Tom.
No,
thank you
fine.
for being here. Much appreciated. A ringing of the trade bell.
Thanks, Jared. Have a good day.
Catch Tom on AFL tonight with the whole Fox Footy team from 2 p.m. grand final day on Channel 504 on Foxtel. Special broadcasts on Friday. The 2 captains' runs from over in the West. That's how we can touch base with Melbourne and the Bulldogs in the lead up to the grand final. So Tom will anchor that for us.
We have to shut down the 5G network now, or these robots will destroy mankind.
But we'll lose all comms, sir.
But it's the only way to eliminate them.
It's just, we're still alive in our multi, sir.
How many legs?
5, sir.
Stand down, everyone. Let's ride this out.
Embrace the future with Sportsbet's new Bet With Mates. Start your group, bet together and share the moment. Conditions apply. Gamble responsibly. 1-800-858-858.
5.6 on the Richter scale, just looking at the USGS website, 38 kilometres south of Mount Buller at a depth of 10 kilometres. That's a fair dinkum earthquake. Steve, the geologist. Oh, Steve, you're important this morning. I'll keep an eye out for your further texts. Betty's Burgers in Chapel Street, Windsor. The side of the building has collapsed, road closed and police on site. I don't believe anyone was hurt that I could see. John in Collingwood, walking past the zoo. Animals not happy. Monkeys particularly unhappy. Stefan, my swimming pool turned into a wave pool. Jared, I'm in Bonnie Doon. No serenity here, close to Mansfield where it was a 6. Madness. JJ in Collingwood, too early for a double scotch? Blimey. Aftershock in Coburg. Nick in Williamstown. Used to live in Los Angeles, Jared, and learnt to not bat an eyelid for anything under 7, but had me wondering where I was for a second. So these are rough times in Melbourne. Justin Rodsky's the chief executive of the Melbourne Storm, thankfully in Queensland today. Justin, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. We didn't feel it up here, I can tell you that.
Getting any reports from home?
Yeah, I have. My phone lit up, actually. I had to check in on my parents and my wife's parents just to see if they were okay. But, yeah, incredible. And I've seen some of the pictures already coming through of that building in Chapel Street in South Yarra. That's incredible.
Club's made the splendid decision to reward its members of the past 2 seasons who have been denied so much footy. For those who are not fully across this, what did you decide to do?
Yeah, we've decided to say thank you and give back to our members of the last 2 seasons, so 2020 and 2021 members who had game day access. So there's about 23,000 of those will receive a free membership in 2022. We just felt that, you know, off the back of what's been a really difficult and challenging 2 years, lockdown after lockdown, our team's been relocated. Our members have only had the chance to see 5 games live at Amy Park, and they've also missed out on 2 final series. You know, we wanted to do something that was going to mean a lot to our members, and we wanted to do something to show how grateful we are for their ongoing support and loyalty. And in the end, we felt this was the best way to do that.
So it is a great gesture. There is a turnover cost to it. What do the maths run to?
Yeah, it's a significant commitment by the club, and it's in the millions, Jared. So, you know, we've done a fair bit of work and planning and preparation for that. And, you know, like every year, there's incremental revenue opportunities within our budget. And next year, it's just going to be a little bit bigger. And, you know, as a management team, our board, executive and staff and everyone associated with the club's just going to work a little bit harder to find a way to cover the gap. And, if we don't get there, we don't get there. But regardless of that, the club wanted to make this commitment to our members. We feel it's really important that they know how grateful we are for their support over such a long period of time, but particularly these last 2 years. So it's significant, but, we're up for the challenge.
Is it an example of, the immediate reaction is it challenges others, it challenges AFL clubs to think in the same way? Do you think it is something that could be taken up across the sporting industry?
It might do, Jared. I know that a number of clubs have done a number of different things to show their appreciation to members. And, we know that members members enjoy making a contribution to their club, to their membership, and obviously, they come in various different ways. And, we've already seen through the feedback that we've got that a number of our members still want to contribute their full membership to the club, and we'll be very thankful for that. But for those that don't, we're giving them this opportunity to have next season on us, just to say thank you for what incredible support they've provided us. So I'm not sure what other clubs are planning or doing. I know a lot of clubs last year did certain things, but for us, this is a very Melbourne Storm thing to do, and we're really proud of what we're doing, and we're really proud to have such fantastic members.
Have you been able to measure the connection of those 23,000 across this final series and on the way through? How tangible is your connection at the moment?
Well, it's funny, we haven't been able to see our members and fans as much as we usually would, whether it be through family days or open training sessions, at games, at our events, whatever it might be. But we have been able to continue to connect through digital and social platforms, through the broadcast, obviously on TV, through our messaging and communication to our members. And, this year alone, we've already passed 20 million viewers across Foxtel and Channel 9 broadcasts. So we know that our members are there. We know that they're enjoying watching us play, and that's giving us a great deal of comfort. And the players and football staff up here in Queensland are really appreciative of that support. We feel it. We hear it, and, we're well and truly out there representing Victoria every time we play. What do you hope that it grows into, Justin? If next season is regular and you're able to be at home and get your full swag of home games, what would you aspire to in terms of memberships? Yeah, so we're looking at 40,000 members next year, which is obviously a big jump for us. We're sitting at 28,000 this year, and we'd hope to then grow that the year after that up to 45,000. So we do see this initiative as an opportunity to really grow our membership base. This is an investment in our future. There's the short-term component of this, which is providing that value back to our members, but there's a mid and long-term value to the club as well, which we hope will be in membership growth, and hopefully we can start to challenge some of those AFL clubs in terms of membership numbers. So Saturday afternoon is in the twilight. It's a big afternoon. Do you have the sense that everyone in Sydney's death riding you, as Cam Munster expressed? Yeah, there's an element of that, I think. But, I think people over the journey of this year, there's an enormous amount of respect there too. The way that the club conducts itself, our messaging, clearly the way we play. So I'd like to think that we've actually won a fair few of those Sydney-siders over as the year's gone on, and it is a massive game. Grand final rematch on Saturday. Two teams that'll be really primed and ready to go, and we'll go in with a lot of confidence. We've had the weekend off. Josh Addo-Carr's back. We're pretty much at full strength, so it's going to be really important for us to come out firing early, put the points on the board early, and then hopefully hang on for the win. Justin, terrific stuff. Well done. It is one of the great organisations in Melbourne and has been recognised as such for many a year. It's a terrific gesture to your members. Good luck for Saturday. Thanks, Jared. Appreciate it. Justin Rodsky, the Chief Executive of Melbourne Storm. Group 1 racing Friday night at Moonee Valley and Saturday at Sandown. It is a spring carnival that is taking the most perfect shape with all the key horses winning races already. We're not going to be there for the Caulfield Cup. We're not going to be there for the Cox Plate. What chance of being at Flemington and at least a few numbers for Melbourne Cup Day? Giles Thompson is the Chief Executive of Racing Victoria. Giles, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Jared. Good to be here.
What hope Melbourne Cup Day? A few patrons on track.
We have some hope, Joe. That's the key. And we have the hope because of the roadmap that was announced on Sunday. and it's all about getting up to that 80% vaccination rate. And if we get to that, then there's a chance that we'll have some crowds during that Cup week. And so we need to get the vaccination rates up, and then the VRC need to work with the health department and government to get their plans signed off. And I know they're planning those at the moment, and they're working hard to try and make it possible if it is possible.
So how disappointing for Caulfield and Moonee Valley as a starting point to miss the markers on the roadmap?
Oh, hugely disappointing, Joe. Yeah, this is the second spring in a row, and I think this time last year we'd sort of come to accept what was going to happen in spring racing 2020, and just thought if we get through this year, we're through it, and that's turned out not to be the case. So for the second year in a row, to have a major disruption through the Spring Racing Carnival is a serious blow, not just to Moonee Valley and Caulfield, but also country clubs right across the state, as well, of course, as the VRC.
So the Flemington Carnival Derby Day, Saturday the 30th of October. So I think, is it lockdown supposed to end the October 26, 25, 26, yes. And then Cup Day is the 2nd. So it's right on the edge, isn't it? This is going to be a close run
thing. It's really
thing.
tight. It's really tight. And I think we hit at the last deadline we had, which I think was first vax, 70%, we hit that early. So I think this will require us to get ahead of the curve. And I've been down to a vaccination centre this morning with my young son, and people are lining up. People are doing the right thing, and hopefully we can get there.
So the plan. What do you reckon the best case scenario is?
Oh, I think best case scenario realistically is a good crowd on Derby Day. I think that is the best case scenario. I mean, something dramatic could change, and we could get a massive acceleration in the coming weeks, and there might be some opportunities in the country in advance of that. But I think realistically, the best case scenario is Derby Day. Probably Cup Day is the realistic best case scenario, and we go from there. Now, of course, by the time we get towards the end of November, then we're a lot more optimistic about that. So things like the Zipping Classic Day on the 27th of November, and the Jericho Cup Day down at Warrnambool on the 28th of November, a lot more optimistic about them, but it just looks like it might just be a little bit too soon for key dates of the spring.
It feels to me really important, Giles. This is a grim time in Melbourne, and the last couple of days have sort of emphasised that further. It feels important to me that there are some Melburnians at the Cup, given its historic place in our culture and in our psyche. Do you have that sense?
I think so, but you and I have got to be a bit careful about that, because we're in our sort of sporting/racing bubble, and we think that's important. Now, it's only going to be allowable, I think, if the broader community is comfortable with it, and the broader community gets comfortable with it, I think, if the vaccination rates are up at those levels. That's the roadmap, and therefore, in that environment, I think it's really important. I think it's really important from a symbolic perspective that Victoria's getting out of this, such an iconic, the major event on our sporting calendar, to have people there on the rails is really, really symbolic and really important. But we're very cognizant of, we are part of a broader community that is going through a really tough time at this point, and we don't want to be overstepping our position in that regard.
The carnival is underway, so it doesn't grant a whole lot of flexibility. Have you had any thought towards trying to nudge things back a couple of weeks to get the best possible outcome?
I mean, we've had thoughts about it, and we've had discussions about it, but of course, there's at the core of our sport are the horses and the trainers that have been preparing those horses for the big features. And that train really leaves the station several months ago.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult, unless you have to, very difficult to change those programs. People are targeting particular dates to have the horses at peak form, and it's not fair on them or the horses to try and change that around a bit, unless you absolutely have to, as we saw actually the Sydney Carnival did in the autumn when the rains hit really hard and made it impossible to race. In those scenarios, you can be flexible, but only a week or so. But the programs are set.
they're well underway by this time of year, and it's a bit too late for all of that.
Last week, you announced the proactive step to mandate vaccination for participants in the racing industry. And I guess we're seeing a visible demonstration on the streets in another walk of life as to those who are opposed to such a measure. Have you had resistance within the racing circles?
Well, I was prepared for a bit more of a backlash than we've had, I think. And I think there's a few reasons for that. One is because I think people understand the health and safety angle on it. Our participants understand that more broadly, and that's why they actually, over 2/3 of them were supportive of mandatory vaccination when we asked them that direct question. They also understand that this is how we minimise the potential for disruption of our sport. We have had, for example, yesterday, issues out at Flemington and to a lesser extent Caulfield, where there has been exposures to someone who tested positive. We've had to lock down those stables. There's been a huge amount of testing going on, a lot of tracing work going on. It's a massive operation for the last 36 hours. We think we're okay so far. The tests have been coming back negative. The race meeting will happen this afternoon at Flemington. But it just goes as a reminder just how fragile this is. And the vaccinations help us through that massively. Everyone in our sport knows that if we keep racing, the damage is reduced. There's still issues with lack of crowds, but if we stop racing, then there's a lot of pain right away across the sport and the state.
Do you think you'll have participants who either stand out or you'll have to stand down through refusal to vaccinate?
I think there's inevitably some of that going to happen, Jared. I think we've got, not least because we've got a huge number of participants.
Yeah.
And, we've got 25,000 people who work in the state. We've got 900-ish trainers, 200-ish jockeys. And, of course, within that, there are going to be people who are going to be anti getting a vaccination. Will make that decision, and they won't be able to attend racetracks as a result. Now, it's a very small number, though, I think. And we've done a fair bit of work now with our own teams at Racing Victoria, which is about 450 people, including all the race day operations people. And it's a very, very small number of people who are either now still not deciding to get a vaccination or who are medically exempt, a handful. So, the numbers are low.
Giles, good luck over the next few weeks as you guide us towards the Flemington Carnival in particular.
Thanks, Jared. Hopefully it'll be uninterrupted and it'll be do some great stories, I'm sure.
Fingers crossed. The Chief Executive of Racing Victoria, Giles Thompson.
Just letting you know, I'm currently watching Sky Racing on the Sportsbet app live from Square Leg. No, they won't catch him. He's home. Oh, sorry. Watch Aussie Racing anywhere with Sportsbet. Conditions apply and gamble responsibly. 1-800-858-858.
From where we'd rather be, let's head over to Perth, where Adam Gilchrist is living in the grand final city. Hello, Gilly.
Yes, good morning, Jared. You're right. It's we're very fortunate as we sit and listen to situations around the parts of Australia and none the least over there in Victoria and Melbourne. That's extraordinary news to us all here about earthquakes on top of everything else that's going on. So our heart and mind's with you all, and we're here obviously in great anticipation of trying to put on a good show for everybody around the grand final. It's the anticipation and excitement is continuing to build. It's really exciting to be a part of.
Does it feel like the biggest sporting event that Perth's had?
Gee, I hadn't stopped to think of it like that in regards to rating it, but it's going to, I would assume it'd have to be right up there. And I think that the thing that most people are saying is that it's probably unlikely to ever happen again, certainly in our lifetime, and we hope not, because we hope that by this stage next year we are back to business as usual, and it is back at the spiritual home of AFL and the grand final, certainly there at the MCG. So yeah, I think that's probably the word that most people are using. Unique. It is probably a once in a lifetime opportunity. And it will rate up there as one of the great sporting events, I think, as far as spectacle go, the way it's presented and how it'll look and feel. And I think we all hope that it's just an actual match, a football match that lives up to that by way of excitement and being an even contest.
Are you busy this week? Is there every function in the world going on? Are you in demand?
No, there's plenty to get to if you wanted to. There's been a few offers here and there, but it's I've got a couple of things on. But what's extraordinary, what I was doing this morning was my son had me tapping onto Ticketmaster not to buy, but to reserve a seat for the open training session on Friday for the two teams. I think 25,000 they're allowing to go there, so it's a ticketed event without costing any money, just so they can track and trace everybody. But wow, that's going to be half full, the stadium, just for a captain's run. So that shows you the hype that's around. And yeah, there's plenty of events on here and there, and people trying to sort of get themselves in and still scrounging for tickets to the game, although I think that's a bit of a lost cause at the moment.
Has the Gilchrist family chosen a team to barrack for on the day?
I think it seems to be Melbourne, like a lot of the sentiment seems to be general. I'd say it's a tough choice, isn't it? Two very likeable teams when you're independent, but I think that's the sentiment. Again, as I mentioned last week, buses driving around with "Give 'em hell" on it and the Melbourne Demons branding all over it. But it's going to be intriguing to see how it unfolds, and just I guess the way the teams are preparing, they're sort of kept a relatively low profile, given that what was it? The Bulldogs only just a couple of days ago got out of their sort of quarantine period, but the spotting of players around various cafes and so on, that's fallen away by the wayside. It's just really they've homed in now back onto the serious stuff. So it's going to be wonderful to be a part of. And as I say, it's I think Melbourne probably just in front by way of the sentimental vote from over in the West from everyone, not just the Gilchrist household.
So international cricket, Gilly, right now it's a bit of a mess with the tours that have been cancelled to Pakistan. I find it hard to be critical from the outside, as if you are in possession of a credible threat that's coming from government, it's probably the governing body's obligation to remove the players, but it plays much broader than that for the aspiration of cricket returning in Pakistan. How have you taken all of it in?
Yeah, and we're sort of casting judgment from afar with minimal detail. I guess that's the two withdrawals from Pakistan. First of all, the New Zealand team that were there, not disclosing any detail on the security issue that caught their attention, and to the point where they wanted to get the team out. So I guess that's proving frustrating for everyone to make an assessment on that. And then a few days later confirmed that they'll be heading to India at some point, probably the double blow. And then the triple blow for Pakistan cricket was England announcing yesterday that they're not going to go there with the men's or women's team for a few white ball games leading into the T20 World Cup. That one is probably even more interesting in that there's no mention of security. It really is just a statement around fatigue of being in bio bubbles and what they deem as the best preparation for the T20 World Cup, which I thought a couple of games against Pakistan in those conditions would be good preparation for a T20 World Cup. But I think it's a show of just how powerful players' associations are in the cricketing landscape at the moment. Jared, particularly in the stronger nations and the more healthier by way of financial health nations in the cricketing landscape. And I'm trying to work out whether this bodes well or negatively for the Ashes with what England have done. By not going, I guess that alleviates another period in a very short bubble. It was only a 4 or 5 day trip that they had scheduled. But if that freshens the players up and their mindset up, it might allow them to think more clearly about coming down for the Ashes, or it might be an indication that if the players don't want to do something, they're getting that message through, and they're going to withdraw from tours they don't want.